Thom Hartmann here with you, and I am just so super excited to have in the studio with us Michael Eric Dyson. He's got a new book out, Tears We Cannot Stop. He, of course, is the professor of sociology at Georgetown University, an ordained minister for 35 years, contributing opinion writer to the New York Times, author of 17 books. And you can tweet him at Michael E. Dyson, D-Y-S-O-N, and not a website, right?
Well, MichaelEricDyson.com.
MichaelEricDyson.com.
Yep.
Cool, great. So, Dr. Dyson, so pleased to have you with us.
Dr. Hartmann, always great to see you, and I'm a fan of yours, and it's great to be on this radio.
Thank you. Back at you. It's this book moved me. This book provoked me, and the book is Tears We Cannot Stop, a sermon to white America. Let's start out with why a sermon and why to white America.
Yes, sir. Well, I was trying to write this book as an analysis, and I've done over the last, 19 books I've written, cultural criticism, engaged reflection, but it just wouldn't come. So I went to bed one night frustrated. My editor is mad at me, and I'm mad at myself, and I'm mad at her, and we're fighting and going back and forth. You know how it is.
Yeah, been there.
I know you do.
All these books.
Yeah. I know you know the deal. So, and then one night it came to me. I was frustrated. I'm in bed, and it's go back to what you know. You're a preacher. Just preach a sermon. Just come from your heart. Tell the truth about what you think. I mean, still be cerebral, still be intellectual, but allow the passions and emotions that have occupied your heart over these last few years about this particular issue of race come to the fore. And that's what I did, and it flowed out. And I wanted to preach a sermon to white America because I wanted to engage white brothers and sisters around this extremely important issue of race. But I didn't seem to reach them as much through other fora, through other means, through other genres. So I thought a sermon is something that they might be familiar with, many of them, engaging in, even if you're not a Christian, because it's not just a Christian sermon. It's a kind of metaphor and a symbol for pleading from my heart on the basis of my emotional investment and my intellectual reflection about the issues that are important to us as Americans. And I want to forge a link and connection between me and my listener. So I said, let me just preach a sermon to white America, because usually when we talk about race, we're thinking about black or brown or red or yellow people. We don't think about white people. And white people are not encouraged often to think about race in regards to them. They don't have to think about it in a certain way or in the same way, not obsessed with it, not riveted by it. So I wanted to invite them into a conversation, and I thought a sermon to them was the best means to do that.
Yeah, I'd like to read a couple of little pieces out of here and to kind of set up a riff on your part. You write, this is on page 86, one of the great privileges of whiteness is not to see color, not to see race, and not to pay a price for ignoring it, except, of course, when you're called on it. But even then, the price pales quite literally in comparison to the high price black folk pay for being black. We pay a price, too, for not even being able to derive recognition and financial reward for the styles that make the world want to be black so bad that they don't mind looking at us so long as they never, ever have to be us. There's like actually about 3 layers of stuff in that one paragraph.
Yeah, no doubt.
So let's start with the great privilege of whiteness not seen. We were talking last night on the TV show, and I pointed out that growing up, I never thought about race, frankly, other than as another thing that was on television. Grew up in a white suburb in southern Lansing, Michigan. My dad worked as a tool and die worker. So everybody around me worked at Oldsmobile. And it was not until my teenage years that I started encountering people of color and who were always talking about race. And I'm like, why are they always talking about race?
Right.
And it wasn't until my 40s or 50s that I realized that was the most powerful piece of white privilege, that I didn't have to wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, I'm a white person. How's that going to influence my day?
Yeah. No, that's a very honest and very powerful reflection on your part. And I think it's true. A lot of white brothers and sisters are not asked to, cajoled to, forced to, or even, invited to think about race. It's not part and parcel of your existence in the same way. Your livelihood may not depend upon it in the same way. And your survival is not dependent upon you negotiating the contradictions of race. And especially for black people, it becomes critical to the vocabulary of our existence, the grammar of our very being, the definition of who we are as people, because so much comes at us. Before we get up and brush our teeth in the morning, Fox News has lambasted us from 10 different angles, just to use one example of one outlet, about issues of race that come at us relentlessly. Poor black people do this. Black people, looking for handouts, or the black president is still X, Y, and Z, on and on and on. And as a result of that, I think many white Americans think, well, black people are obsessed with race. You're the ones who are keeping it alive, right? We want to get beyond race. We don't even want to talk race. So what converges there is amnesia and ignorance, literally ignoring race on the one hand, and the claim that black people are only obsessed with race, and as a result of that, get blamed for its origins. And that's a paradox that is quite perilous and hurtful. And we try to say to many white brothers and sisters, no, it's not that we're obsessed with race because we think it's a good thing to be obsessed with race. We're obsessed with it because our lives depend on it. Our children are killed in disproportionate numbers on the streets of America when they're unarmed by police. Our children are expelled in disproportionate numbers from schools. They are seen and racially profiled, as we are, in retail outlets, and on and on and on. So I think in one way, the old Peggy McIntosh, white privilege and asking white people to unpack the knapsack of their privilege is something that's relevant here. And what I'm trying to do is update that, so to speak, by saying, look, one of the things it means to be white is never have to worry about it, never have to be concerned about it. Men don't often think of gender in the way that women do. They're not forced to think about gender in the way that women do. Women's lives are at stake. Rape is a real possibility for women, far more, importantly than men. And so when you're not part of a group that is forced forever to have to consider the consequences of your being and your behavior and your identity and the kind of resentment that it engenders, you're relatively blissfully, blithely indifferent to what goes on among other people.
So what you're describing, in my mind, to kind of interpret,
right,
is white supremacy. Is a culture built on white supremacy, is a government built on white supremacy, is an economic and social structure built, and not just white supremacy, white male supremacy.
Yeah, right.
Because, again,
right,
as a white man,
right,
like you say, I don't, walk down the street worrying about, is that woman going to rape me?
Right.
Whereas there are women walking down the street wondering why this guy is looking at him that way.
Of course.
And so here you've got white men at the top of this pyramid that arguably they established when they first invaded this continent, or we can take this back 7,000 years if you want, but it's been around for a long time.
Right. And
it's like, how do you disrupt that?
Yeah.
How do you, particularly when probably 80–90% of white males don't realize the reality of this pyramidal power structure that they're at the apex of. And many of them would argue that they're not. Hey, I'm just a poor coal miner in West Virginia who lost his job,
Yeah, right.
And they don't realize that even at that, they've got enormous privilege.
Yeah.
And, I get white people calling in going, well, you got a black president, you got equal opportunity, you got the civil rights laws, you got blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's not enough. What does it take? How do we get there?
Well, for people like you saying what you just said, I'm very serious. If we had more engaged, enlightened white brothers and sisters like you, speaking up, speaking out, engaging white people, engendering controversy to be certain, as a result of your awareness, making them uncomfortable, moving the needle, pushing the rock like a racial myth, like a Sisyphus up the hill, knowing that it's going to come back down, but you got to keep going at it. You got to keep repeating it. You got to keep stating it. I'm a teacher, and repetition is our, trademark. You got to keep saying it and saying it again. You got to keep preaching it and preaching it again. And it's important to talk about that, to disrupt the narrative of what's going on. I happen to think that the presidency of Donald Trump provides a keen opportunity for us to be able to engage this. Why? Because Donald Trump is literally the face of white innocence. Donald Trump is the face of white privilege that has no awareness. And many white people for the first time might go, oh, if that's what it looks like,
right,
then maybe I get it.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Michael Eric Dyson.